4 astronauts just came back safely to Earth after flying around the far side of the moon. Let's talk about what they saw. Most of the time when we get views from space from astronauts, they're on the International Space Station, and that's just a couple hundred miles up. They get amazing views of the planet from the space station, but they can't see very much beyond the horizon. Now, the Artemis II astronauts, they got this really special view. They got the blue marble hanging there in space. We can see a lot of cool things in this image. Here we've got the aurora, the northern and southern lights, glowing sort of dimly green. And then over here on this side, this is called the zodiacal light. It's dust in our solar system, and when sunlight kind of hits it from behind, it turns into this beautiful glow. And then we've even got this little glare in the middle of the photo, and that's because there's an astronaut in the capsule with their camera pressed up against the window. And then we had the photos from when they actually got to the moon, and these are also super special. So the Apollo astronauts in the 60s and 70s did fly around the far side of the moon, and they got some pictures too. But the Artemis astronauts are farther away. In fact, they've gone farther than any humans have ever traveled from Earth. And that means we get views like this. They've got a full disk view. They can see the whole moon all at once. You might have noticed that some of these craters are actually in lines. These are called crater chains, lines of debris that have been cast out from bigger meteorite impacts, like this big basin up here on the side. This is called Oriental. This is the thing when I talked to all the Artemis II scientists, they were most excited to see. Scientists are really interested in Oriental because it's the biggest and the youngest of the large impact basins on the moon. It's only 3.8 billion years old. You can see here it's got 3 concentric rings, almost like a bullseye or a target. That's because the impact that created it basically melted the moon's crust, and the energy rippled outwards, like throwing a stone into a pond. So one of the reasons we sent astronauts in the first place is so they could see things that cameras can't. And that happened. The Artemis II astronauts said they saw colors on the lunar surface. We can't see it in this picture, but that's something they could pick up. And that can tell us more about the chemistry and geology of the lunar surface. And here's another really cool photo we got. This is a total solar eclipse, as seen from the Artemis II spacecraft. On Earth, you'd look up and you'd see this wispy stuff around the edge of the eclipsed sun, and that's the sun's outer atmosphere, its corona. But here, as seen from the Artemis II spacecraft, that glow around the moon isn't the solar corona. It's sunlight reflecting off dust in the solar system, that zodiacal light that we talked about earlier. Another really cool thing about this image is normally we can't see stuff like stars and planets around the moon. But now, because the sun's light is dimmed, we can see stars and planets popping out in the darkness. I think it's really easy to lose perspective on how amazing these photos are. We're used to seeing graphics, we're used to seeing visualizations, but this is real information. These are photos taken from space by humans, by astronauts, by people just like you and me. If you've got any questions about these photos or anything else about Artemis, drop them in the comments.